This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. Come on in, come on in. We have breaking news in the Bryan Kohberger case. Today, we're going to be talking about BK's signed confession. We're going to be looking at that together. The bizarre interview that Dr. Ramsland gave to the New York Times, Howard Blum's suspicion about the Michael and Bryan Kohberger road trip, new statements from the victim's family. Is this plea deal justice? And Dr. Lieberman is giving her expert opinion on BK's motive. So come on in, tell me where you are from. You can tell me the state, the city, the continent. And we're also going to be talking about experts are sounding the alarm because they believe that this plea deal strategy could backfire in the long term. Will Bryan Kohberger be able to walk free? So come on in and tell me where you are from. And let's start out with this signed plea deal. First, my name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. This video is for educational purposes only. All right, so let's start off with the plea deal. With the signed confession. Let's start off with the signed confession. Hold on one second. Let me grab it. We're going to read through it together as a Reporter Room community. Let me take this down and add this one in. There we go. Okay. So let's go through this signed confession, and then we're going to talk about whether or not this plea deal is going to backfire in the long term. So we're going to talk about the plea deal. We're going to talk about the confession. So this is it. Let's look at this together. So this is Bryan Kohberger's signed confession. He admits to responsibility for count 1, burglary, which requires the following elements. The unlawful entry of a residence at the 1122 King Road home with the intent to commit doing away with someone. I'm going to watch my words here in case you have little ones in the room. I admit to responsibility of count 2, murder of the first degree, which requires the following elements: willful, unlawful, deliberate with premeditation and with malice aforethought, doing away with someone of Maddie Mogan. And then he admits to count 3, which is doing away with Kaylee Gonzalez. Then he admits to count 4, which is doing away with Xana Kernodle. And then he admits to count 5, which is doing away with Ethan Chapin. He has signed it here July 1st, Bryan C. Kohberger. So that is the document that I wanted to share with you guys. And now we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not this is all going to backfire, and is Bryan Kohberger going to be able to walk away from this? Well, some experts think that he is. So let me close this out and pull this one up. So experts are warning that this plea deal strategy could backfire. Let me grab it. And they are considering, comparing this and contrasting this with what's going on right now with the Menendez brother case. So this is an expert. He's, sounding the alarm that this plea deal strategy is a dangerous, calculated, long game. Let's listen in.
Dr. Chris Mohanty here, weighing in on the Idaho murder plea bargain agreement in which the offender was allowed to make a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. I have a number of concerns about this, not the least of which is that all victims' families were not adequately consulted for their thoughts and feelings about it. And in particular, some of the commentary that they had is especially relevant. The offender did not have to give any confession or explanation or narrative of what actually happened. So when the families raised the concern of, well, what if he, alleges that somebody else was involved? What if he does that down the road? These are concerns. We don't know what actually happened other than what the evidence thus far has shown.
And I agree with this expert. I think that it's very troubling that he is not being forced to allocute to what he did, because he could get a very empathetic book deal with Dr. Ramsland. And we're going to talk about a really bizarre interview that she gave to the New York Times in just a moment. So please stay with me. But he could get a very empathetic book deal with her, and then, or some type of sympathetic, like what the Menendez brothers got on Netflix, and then end up getting his sentence commuted in some way or reduced.
The other problem is the whole, waiving rights to appeal. That's basically nonsense, because at some point laws change, case law changes, and who knows, someday it may be unconstitutional for a person to waive their rights of appeal. So the idea that this is, a done deal, I believe that this was kicked down the road by the prosecution. I think they took the easier, softer way out. I think it's problematic. I think they could have done a heck of a lot better job on the details of said plea bargain agreement. The other problem is,
and a lot of people are struggling with the details, right? That he wasn't forced to allocute. The families aren't getting the answers. Now, two of the families are very happy with this, and two of the families are not. The two families that are not happy with this are the Gonzalez family and the Cornoto family, have both spoken out and just feel like this is not enough. They have questions, and we're going to talk about 11 important questions that we didn't get answers to in just a moment. So please stay with me. And we're going to talk about this potential for a sympathetic book deal. This is not just a hypothetical in the future. This is happening potentially now.
As time goes on, these kinds of things morph and evolve. We've seen a lot of cases that down the road, a new law comes up and so forth that leads to revisiting sentencing decisions. And this guy has not, tied himself to a statement of what actually happened. So down the road, he could make up something, and at that point, tell it to some news person or somebody making a movie, a TV production, and then all this sympathy, will come for him potentially. Maybe he gets benefit in other ways from it. And I think it's important to tie him to a story of what actually happened, vet that story, as opposed to what's happened here. I think what's happened here is that this offender is playing the long game. And someday, I believe that he'll capitalize upon that opportunistically.
Remember, Bryan Kohberger has his master's degree in criminology. He understands how the law works. He understands how the legal system works. And Ann Taylor, who's his attorney, looked as happy as could be at the plea hearing. So, I do wonder if he's thinking, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and he looks at something like the Menendez case where, these two did away with their parents. And now people are like, oh, but, bad things happen to them. And there's no evidence of this. This is just them saying that. But it is concerning that he's not being tied to a story, even in writing, with what I just shared with you, which is his confession. He's not being tied to a story.
This plea bargain, I believe, was ill-conceived and a real problem.
Okay, so that is an expert, and my sourcing on this is Fox News. So let's continue on, because I think it's already becoming a problem. I want to talk to you guys about, let me put up BK here. Okay, I want to talk to you guys about this bizarre interview that Dr. Ramsland, this is Bryan Kohberger's former professor, she not only had him for one class. She had him for multiple classes, between 3 and 4 classes, while he was attending at DeSales. And so I can't show you the New York Times articles, but I'm going to share it with you. And I have some things to say, some thoughts to say about this. So let's talk about Dr. Ramsland and this bizarre interview that she gave to the New York Times this weekend. She is being characterized as one of the nation's most prominent experts on SK in this interview. And she said she got word from her colleague about one of her former students, that would be Bryan Kohberger, being arrested for doing away with Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. And so I guess my question is anybody really questioning whether or not she is an expert? I mean, she's a professor, she has an education, but she had a Ted Bundy wannabe, which is Bryan Kohberger, sitting right in her classroom. And she, not just for one class, but for multiple classes, and she didn't even notice. And I was just, I just curious, if she's, an expert, then why couldn't she pick out a copycat Ted Bundy wannabe? If all this BTK book and everything that she's claiming, is true. And according to Dr. Ramsland, this is going back to the New York Times, she said, quote, "It left her completely stunned and that she doubted it could possibly be true." And again, I'm like, this is supposed to be an expert on SKs, and she's got one in her classrooms, multiple, plural. And, I'm seeing her on News Nation. And after reading this New York Times, I don't believe that, I just find it hard that even after she's hearing this, she still can't believe that it's true. This is something that a layperson would say, not something that I would think an expert would say. Let me know if you have a different feeling. And I'm not saying she's not a great professor. I'm sure she's a wonderful teacher, but it is, I just think that how we characterize people really matters. And I just think that it's concerning that she couldn't pick up on anything weird about this guy, especially in light of the WSU students who thought he was very weird and very strange. So I think, in my opinion, she knew it was true, and that she wanted to ingratiate herself into Bryan Kohberger and into his family, because I think she is planning to write a book. She said, quote, "I thought they have to be wrong." This is Dr. Ramsland. "This has to be wrong. It's not the Bryan Kohberger I know." And why? Okay, if she's the expert, the SK expert, and and it's not the Bryan Kohberger that she knows, well, what was the point of spending 5 years writing a book with BTK serial Dennis Rader if she can't even pick out a budding copycat? And that when she hears about it, she still doesn't think that it's the Bryan that she knows. And so I just feel like we have to be, I think she's a good professor, but I think it's a mistake to characterize her as some type of SK expert. That's just my opinion. Let me know if you have a different one. And I'm not, as a human being, I'm sure she's very nice. As a teacher, a professor, I think she's very nice. But getting together with Dennis Rader for 5 years to write books with him, I don't know if that did anything for anybody except Dennis Rader. It gave him a lot of attention. It gave him narcissistic supply. But she continues on in this troubling New York Times interview. She says, at DeSales University, where this is part of the article, where Mr. Kohberger got his master's degree in criminal justice in 2022, Dr. Ramsland, a professor of forensic psychology who has written extensively about high-profile murderers, including an examination of the SK known as BTK. Her books include The Mind of a Murderer and How to Catch a SK. I'm watching my words. So, I feel like she wrote these books with BTK, but I don't think it told us a lot about how to catch them or to how to get into the mind of somebody like this. And do we need to get into the mind of somebody like this? Let me know what you think. Because she had Bryan Kohberger sitting right in front of her for multiple classes and didn't even know. So again, what is the research value of this? I can see doing a peer-reviewed article or journal, but what is the value of spending 5 years with Dennis Rader to write multiple books. But just wait, it gets worse, because it says, over the years, Dr. Ramsland, this is back to New York Times article, she has always kept aware of the prospect that people might take her courses and learn the methods of SKs in order to build on their own nefarious ideas. And she said her time with Mr. Kohberger, she never had that concern. Okay, so what was the point of spending 5 years with Dennis Rader writing the book? Obviously, it's not helping people to spot future SKs. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I just think that I'm really concerned that she's going to platform Bryan Kohberger and his family and turn him into, some type of empathetic, sympathetic character so that she can get the access that she wants to write the book. But, he's ice cold. We all saw him in the plea deal. There was no empathy for the victims. There was no empathy for their loved ones. There was no, I'm so sorry I did this. No shame. There was nothing going on behind those eyes. Even the people that encountered him at that pool party that, in Idaho when he first got there, or ran into him hiking when they were coming down the mountain and he was going up, they even thought he was weird. The WSU students, where he was grading females differently than males, thought he was weird. But listen to how Dr. Ramsland characterizes him. And remember, this is a new New York Times article. She said he was very polite, respectful, seemingly genuinely engaged with the material as a potential researcher, teacher, somebody who was interested in a career. This is what Dr. Ramsland is saying about him. So again, he went on a date with a young woman, told her she had nice birthing hips. The Seven Sirens owner, not a SK expert, but he had a file or a little card on Bryan Kohberger because he was harassing female students. He was a creeper. But she's, I know it's like probably hard for people to believe that knew him, but the fact that she saw no red flags with this guy at all, and even when she heard this, and wait, this article gets worse. It just gets worse. It says, after Mr. Kohberger's arrest in December of 2022, weeks after the, I'm watching my words, murders in Moscow, Idaho, she expected he would clear his name. But she found it odd that Mr. Kohberger was not offering an alibi. Well, yeah, because he did it. And then the article continues. When one finally did emerge more than a year after the case began, Mr. Kohberger said he had been out driving on the night these crimes were committed. I'm paraphrasing. I'm watching my words here. And she said, this is Dr. Ramsland said, I thought that's not an alibi. And it's not. She has declined interviews, but now she's she's possibly going to platform this guy. She's under a gag order, so she shouldn't be giving any interviews at all. But she, Howard Blum said she was trying to ingratiate herself with Bryan Kohberger's family, and that they agreed to, are they going to write a book with her, and are they going to cash in? One way to circumvent the family members from getting the money from the book deal would for Bryan Kohberger to just have it all go to his family members, Michael, Marianne, and his two sisters, Amanda and Melissa. And they could put it in his commissary on his behalf, put it in a trust account for him, and then he can still cash in. And the family members of the victims get nothing. Dr. Ramsland still declined to, this is according to New York Times, to discuss specifics and his academics because of student privacy laws. And months before Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana were done away with, a Reddit user who identified himself as Bryan Kohberger asked people who had spent time in prison about a survey about crimes they had committed, and the survey listed Mr. Kohberger as a student investigator and asked respondents about their thoughts, emotions, actions from the beginning to the end of the crime process. And Dr. Ramsland said that this was the kind of survey might look suspicious in hindsight now that Mr. Kohberger has been charged with a crime, but in a criminology department, that kind of research has been common for decades. But I guess what I want to know is, did she know that he was calling one of the people that he creeped out one of the criminals that answered his survey. He creeped him out because he called them, wanted to hear the details of the crimes, multiple times. He was reliving this crime through this guy. So he creeped him out, but Dr. Ramsland, the SK expert, nothing at all. Dr. Ramsland said that in the aftermath of Mr. Kohberger's arrest, she reached out to his family to offer support. So there it is. She's already reached out to his family. And, so Howard Blum was right about this. She was reaching out to BK's family, offering support. This is what he was trying to report out. And then she turned around and said, well, she wasn't reaching out to Bryan Kohberger. Okay, but you're reaching out to the family. Howard Blum was telling the truth about that. And she said that they had not remained in touch. This is what she said to New York Times. They had not remained in touch. She has not corresponded with Mr. Kohberger since the spring of 2022, before the crimes, but that she wanted, this is New York Times, she wanted to try to connect with him in the future to better understand him. So think about what I just shared with you on the Fox News expert, and then line that up with the fact that this professor wants to connect with Bryan Kohberger. She's putting it out there publicly in the New York Times. I'm sure he knows about it. I'm sure his family members know about it, to connect with him in the future to understand him better. Again, she's going to spend years giving this guy exactly what he wants, infamy. She's going to tell his story from his point of view, tell the story from the family members' point of view. And then, are the proceeds of this book going to go to the victims' family members? Or is there going to be an end run around, and is there going to be a cash in? And are we going to continue to platform people that commit crimes like this, and allow them to cash in? All he has to do is have his family members make some comments in the book, and they can get paid for everything. He can get paid nothing, and the victims' families get nothing. I just have a problem with that. Let me know what you think. So let's continue on with the article, because I think this is absolutely appalling, in my opinion. It says, quote, "In the meantime," she said, this is Dr. Ramsland, "it makes sense to her that he had decided to enter a guilty plea rather than going to trial. She said, I wasn't surprised by the plea once the judge took away every option, that he couldn't use his alibi. He couldn't use an alternative suspect. There's nothing left," Dr. Ramsland said. "And now he's facing a lot of evidence piled up and the DP, so it did not surprise me." And I just want to say there's so much problems with what she just said in this paragraph that I just read you. She said, quote, "The judge took away every option." Took away? You mean the judge didn't allow Ann Taylor to impugn the reputation of 4 innocent people so that Bryan Kohberger could try to get off? Took away? That's how she's characterizing this? The judge took it away because he wanted Ann Taylor to offer actual evidence before Ann Taylor could trash somebody's reputation on internationally televised trial? The judge didn't take away Bryan Kohberger's option to provide an alibi. Also, BK was granted extension after extension. The judge was simply following the law in Idaho, which says that the alibi has to say where the person was at the time of the crimes. And he went way above. Normally, the alibi has to be provided within 10 days of when the prosecution asked for it. And here we are over 2.5 years later, and Bryan Kohberger just did his plea deal. But 2.5 years later, he was still being granted extensions to provide an alibi. And instead, Ann Taylor was going to put out a conspiracy theory about Bryan Kohberger driving around in his car. She was going to use Cy Ray to do it. And the judge said that's not an alibi. And he's just following what Idaho law says. So to me, Dr. Ramsland saying that the judge took away every option from Bryan Kohberger to provide alternative suspects, I'm sorry, but she's definitely offering sympathy for Bryan Kohberger. She's definitely offering sympathy because the judge didn't allow Ann Taylor and Bryan Kohberger to drag 4 innocent people. Remember, they did this just a couple of days, a week before they went in to ask for this plea deal from the prosecution. And I think it's absolutely appalling that they went in to ruin 4 people's lives to get this Ted Bundy wannabe off the hook. Imagine if you were one of these 4 people and the defense attorney singled you out without any evidence at all, just so she could create reasonable doubt for Bryan Kohberger. And so here we have Dr. Ramsland willing to give Bryan Kohberger everything that he wants. He is going to love having her undivided attention for the next 5 years while she writes multiple books for him. And he's going to get all kinds of narcissistic supply and from himself. And she's going to make him, in my opinion, because she's already blaming the judge basically for, how dare he not follow the law in Idaho. But I just want to know what you guys think. Let's do a poll. Do you think it's ethical to platform a person who pleads guilty, who said he's guilty? And I just shared with you his confession, his signed confession. Is it okay to platform somebody like that in a book and make them, to tell their side of the story? Is there their side that's worth telling? Let me know if you think, yes, this is fine. It's absolutely great. I think Dr. Ramsland should give him the book deal, and put a note if you think that this is wrong and Dr. Ramsland should not give him a book deal. Because I think that we need some laws to be passed to prevent people who commit crimes like this from then cashing in via their family members, which is, I think, how they're going to do an end run around this. So she won't pay Bryan Kohberger directly, but she'll give the money to his family, or maybe to a trust that's controlled by the family. But I just don't think it's right. I think if she does decide to write a book, she should do it and give 100% of the proceeds to the families of the victims. If she's just going to do it, I don't think she should do it at all, but about him from his point of view. But it sounds like she's going to do it. And people are going to buy it and people are going to read it. And I just hope that 100% of those proceeds are given directly to family members of the victims. That's what I hope. But I want to talk about Howard Blum's suspicions regarding this road trip with Michael and Bryan Kohberger. And then we're going to talk about, is this plea deal, is this really justice? This plea deal, is this fair? And then Dr. Lieberman's expert opinion on Bryan Kohberger's motive in just a minute. But let's talk about Howard Blum's suspicions about Bryan Kohberger. Let me pull this up. Okay, so this is what Howard Blum posted. He said, why did Kohberger change his mind and take a plea deal? Did it have to do with keeping his parents off the stand, not wanting his mother questioned about the 6 a.m. call he made to her the day of the crimes? I'm watching my words. Fear of father being asked about their cross-country Christmas trip. And I just put out a video a few minutes ago all about that. You'll probably want to go watch that next, about this road trip and the timing of it. And the fact that these plane tickets weren't purchased until December the 10th. And Bryan Kohberger wasn't fired until December 19th. So didn't his dad wonder or have any kind of feeling about, hey, maybe there's something going on here? Or is there just really a deep denial going on in this case? But I want to talk about statements by the victims' families too. We have new statements from them. They're speaking out, sharing new details about what happened. And this whole thing is really, really sad in light of everything. Let me just pause this for a second and take this down. I'm just really disturbed by this whole thing. So Kaylee Gonzalez's mom, Christy, has spoken out. And I'm just going to give you guys a trigger warning here. I'm going to watch my words. But she, this has infuriated the Gonzalez family, and they're having a lot of the same concerns that this Fox News expert is having. which is that, somebody could do a sympathetic book. And that's why I wanted to share that New York Times article, because it's already happening, guys. It's already happening. So ahead of the sentencing, Christy shared harrowing details about her daughter's final moments. And she hit back at critics who have suggested that the family cares more about vengeance than justice. And she says, quote, he deserved life on row. People say that the Gonzalez's don't want justice, they want vengeance. Well, let me ask you a question. If your 21-year-old daughter was sleeping in her bed and Bryan Kohberger went into her house with the intention, and I'm going to watch my words here, to do away with her, and he did it by many times, as well as beating her in the face and head, while it was clear that she fought for her life, what would you want, justice or vengeance? And so, they wanted capital punishment. And Steve Gonzalez shared that what happened to Kaylee was so brutal that she would have passed away from that, even if the knife had not been used. That's how bad it was. So I just, for the people who are like, dragging the Gonzalez's, I just want to say that if this was your loved one, you might feel the same way. Nobody there for the grace of God, go I. This could have been anybody's child. These young people were in their own homes, in their own rooms, in their own beds, minding their own business. And this man broke into their house for no reason, just for the sole purpose of doing away with these beautiful young people. This is Kaylee. The Gonzalez's have slammed the plea deal, hitting out at lead prosecutor Bill Thompson for notifying them of the decision by letter. And it was an email. And I do think that if you're going to make a deal like this, maybe a personal phone call would be the better way to handle something like this than just sending it in an email. Let me know what you think. But the family members have expressed gratitude that they will be spared a trial. So that's going to be the Chapin family and the Mogan family. They said, but this is what Christy feels, and she is entitled to her feelings. Nobody should tell her she's not allowed to feel what she's feeling, because she said, BK did not show Kaylee any mercy. She said, people tell us we should be happy with life in prison without parole, as he will never get out. And how this is not a win, they ask. Well, DP also means life on death row, and death row is a lot worse than just regular population. I did do a comparison on the visuals, and it is a lot worse. And think about some of the guys that are on death row, like Chad Daybell. It just doesn't seem like justice is being applied equally, and we're going to talk about more about that in just a second. But she says, she said, we knew it would be decades before he would ever face the capital punishment. I'm watching my words. We knew that this was not going to happen anytime soon, but his life on row would have served, while serving his time, would have been much worse than serving his time in life in prison. So I also think it's concerning that he wasn't made to allocute for any of his crimes. And this is the face that, we got, from him. It was just this cold face, just this, lack of empathy, lack of remorse. And, these are these beautiful young people, Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana. And this guy gets to just walk away with jail time. I can understand why family members feel upset, and I don't want to minimize what the Gonzalez family is feeling, even though, I don't know what's going on with Bill Thompson. And, maybe he's having some health issues that we're just not aware of, and was worried he wouldn't be able to see the trial all the way through to the finish line. I'm not really sure. But I do think it's concerning that the families are, so upset. And I don't want to impugn Bill Thompson. I like Bill Thompson. But I just wonder, could this have been handled a little bit differently? And if it had, maybe people wouldn't be so upset about this guy getting away with that. So I did a poll. We're going to we'll go through the poll next, and then we're going to be talking about equal justice. Was this plea deal equal justice? Because think about who's there. You know, Chad Daybell got capital punishment in Idaho, right? But Bryan Kohberger didn't. You know, if this was your 21-year-old daughter, would you feel like this was equal justice or not? And then we're going to talk about Dr. Lieberman's expert opinion on Bryan Kohberger's motive right after that. But let me check in with chat because I did a poll. I wanted to know what you guys thought about this book deal. Let me back up. And, you know, and maybe Bill Thompson has stuff going on that we just don't know about. Please keep it classy in the chat, guys. No caps, and please watch your words so that you don't get stuck in the YouTube algorithm. And we don't also, so I don't have to delete your comments. I do want to say thank you to Brother Mike for our head mod, Brother Mike, and our head mod, Njaz. Thank you for modding today and keeping it classy in the chat. Thank you to all of you who are here. Jody is modding. Thank you. And Susan and Donna. So Susan says no. No. Jody says no. Maria says no. Tracy says no. Dynamite says you were absolutely correct on all your reporting. In this case, what a bombshell. Hearing him admitting to, yeah. No. Holly agrees with you. Thank you for modding today, Holly. Barbara says no. Thank you for modding, Barbara. So a lot of no's. Lizzie says not for profit, or the profits have to go to the victims' families. No giving the profits to his family and doing an end run around the law here. Jolene, no. No. Kay says yes. And Jess says no. Chris says no. Scooby says, I need him to admit what he did, why he did this, who the intended target was, and why. Yeah, we're going to go through 11 questions that deserve answers. In just a moment. Yes, it's legal, but no, not ethical. Beth thinks it's wrong. So should we change the law? Maybe it should be called Kaylee's Law. That makes it against the law for these guys to be able to do a book deal or a movie deal once they're convicted and sitting behind bars of something like this. Or should that have been part of the plea deal? Jeff said, why wouldn't you make a few bucks? He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Are you making a few bucks off of this situation? Well, Jeff, I didn't do away with anybody, did I? Right? Did I? I don't think so. Oh, I know so. So it's not the same thing. I'm not saying Dr. Ramsland can't go in and make money from it, but I don't think Bryan Kohberger or his family should be profiting from this. That's my feeling. Mike doesn't think so either. But Brown thinks it should be against the law. Farrah Gamoth says no. We are doing a poll, if you're just joining me, on whether or not it is ethical to platform these guys once Bryan Kohberger admitted that he did it. Once they admit that they did it, is it okay to platform them and give them a sympathetic book deal to get their side of the story? That's what we're talking about. Is it ethical? Kim says no. Sue Joy says not appropriate. Chris doesn't think no. Crafty one says no. Sarah said no. Kathleen says no. Okay, a lot of no's. Kay wants to know what he says to him. Yeah. Well, she spent 5 years writing the book with BTK. So she platformed him. She gave him lots of attention, right? He got lots of narcissistic supply. And for not all narcissists are sociopaths, most are not, but for sure, all sociopathic people. And I'm not diagnosing Bryan Kohberger, but he did just admit to doing away with 4 innocent young people who, they don't even know who he is. Welcome, Shell, as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. I'm glad you're here with me. Thank you to Brother Mike for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so kind and generous of you. Thank you so much. I will be putting that toward the channel. Thank you to Njaz for the gifted Reporter Room membership. If you received that Reporter Room membership, make sure you say thank you to Njaz, and thank you so much, Njaz. And Inja's gifted, oh my gosh, 5 reporter room memberships. So if you're watching, come on up and talk to me, because you might get gifted a reporter room membership, you guys. Thank you so much, Enjaz. That is so nice of you. Welcome to Lynn Gen 2 as a brand new reporter room channel member. Welcome to the family. And Nick says, thank you for the $5 super sticker. It says, Bryan Kohberger was an SK in the making. The fact that he attempted to buy another knife of the same make shows he was going to do it again. Yeah, I agree with your assessment. I think the fact that he wanted another one definitely says it. And the fact that he had all these pictures of these young people definitely tells me the same thing. So Donna says, welcome to all the two new channel members. Thank you. And Zelda says, he or his family should not get any more attention or money for the story. It would be, yeah. So Sassy says, the Menendez brothers pled not guilty. They never admitted the real truth and have never shown remorse. A totally different cases. I agree. But my point, and the Fox News commentator point, was that at the time that they did away with their parents, and I know that a Netflix documentary made it look a certain kind of way, but at the time they had no remorse. They were taking tennis lessons. They were, spending all their parents' money. While they did deny it. They've never admitted to it. They've never expressed remorse for doing it. I do think they agreed that they did it. Now they will tell you that they did it now, but they, blame it on their parents for why they did it. But it is definitely a problem. Top Cat, thank you for modding, says the prosecution isn't going to get everything they want in the plea deal allocution. There is give and take. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a good point. All right, so let's talk about let me just getting to the right page on my paper. We're going to talk about the 11 questions that we need answers to, and we're going to talk about the motive with Dr. Carol Lieberman has shared the motive. But I just want to talk a little bit about equal justice in this plea deal. And I do think that the gag order that was imposed on the families of the victims for around 2 years, this judge in Ada County did lift the gag order on the victims' families. But imagine having your loved one, put yourself in Christy Gonzalez's shoes. You're a mom, or in Steve Gonzalez's shoes. You're a dad, and you find out your loved one passed away, was done away with in this manner. And then you're told by the courts that you're not allowed to talk about it publicly. And I just think that this was the beginning of just a huge breakdown between the prosecution and the families. And obviously there, is some hurt feelings about this. And I do hope that we, that by talking about this, that maybe we can keep this from happening again to future family members. But I do think it was ridiculous. And let me know what you think. If you have a different take, or if you feel the same way, if you agree or disagree. But do you think it was appropriate to put the gag order on the family members? Because I don't think it was. I think that they were innocent. And I think also the roommates, even though they were going to be witnesses, because they were also victims, and this judge in Ada County has said they were victims, I think they also should have been allowed to speak out, because so much was attributed to them. Their reputations were dragged for 2.5 years. And I think what happened to them is really, really sad. But I do think that all of the attention in our court system here in the United States immediately shifts over to the perpetrator. And let me know, and what his rights are. Is he getting his vegan meals? Is he getting to wear a suit? Or does he have to wear a jumpsuit to court? Is he in handcuffs? It's so much is shifted over to the benefit of the perpetrator that I feel like the victims' families, are getting lost in this. And, maybe if we can take something positive away from this, and I'm not saying what happened to these 4 innocent young people. That's not my this. My this is the breakdown in communication between the prosecution and the family members of the victims. Maybe if we can take something away from this, would be to somehow, make some adjustments in our legal system to better include the family members and the victims of the family members of the victims. Because like Christy said, BK didn't show Kaylee any mercy. So let's talk about Dr. Carol Lieberman's, her expert opinion on what Bryan Kohberger's motive was. And then we're going to talk about the 11 questions that we all need answers to. And let me know if I've left anything out on those questions. So Carol Lieberman says that, told, and let me pull this up for you guys. And she wanted to try to share this in an effort to help the family members of the victims. So she thinks that this is Kim Kenley. If you've been with this channel for a while, you already know that this was the cheerleader that Bryan Kohberger had a crush on in high school. And in my opinion, I think her general look, the general shape of her face, she's not an exact match, but I think she looks very similar to Maddie in just her, general look. But let's talk about what Carol Lieberman said. And I think this was nice that she tried to bring comfort to the family members of the victims. She's a forensic psychiatrist, and she told the Daily Mail how BK's rage could have been triggered by a psychological pattern. She said it's especially significant that Maddie and Kaylee look like the blonde cheerleader who rejected him in middle school. This is what she told the Daily Mail. This was Kim Kenley, and she was a very popular cheerleader. And the unwanted attention, Bryan Kohberger reportedly focused his unwanted attention on Kim during middle school, leaving her love letters and just making, quote, weird comments. And she did not reciprocate his feelings. Now, the FBI did interview Kim in order to help shed light on Bryan Kohberger's personality. And some experts, including this one, have suggested that his perceived rejection of Kim, or by the popular girls in general, may have played a role in the rage that led to the Idaho crimes, as he might have seen a similar unattainable archetype in the victims. And the expert has looked at BK's demeanor during the plea agreement, and there certainly are a lot of red flags. This is according to Dr. Lieberman. She said he was so angry, so defiant. He certainly wasn't remorseful. And as many of you guys pointed out in the comment section, how just ice cold Bryan Kohberger looked at that hearing. There was no sense of shame. There was no sense of sorrow. There was no empathy for the victims' loved ones, for the family members, nothing. He was just ice cold. Kim Kenley, her mom, Sandra, did tell the Daily Mail that BK had pined over Kim after often leaving her love notes. So what I am seeing, this trope that I do see in the media a lot, that in my opinion kind of excuses these guys, and I just want to address it. I don't want to single out this newspaper, but I just do want to address this trope. Let me just put up a picture of Kim for a second. This trope of the bullied guy who then goes on to do away with innocent people. And I just want to take a look at this from Kim's point of view. She was just in 6th grade. And he was relentlessly pursuing her, repeatedly leaving her love letters in her locker and telling her he liked her, according to Kim's mom. So I think that, it's concerning that Kim is saying she's not interested. She's in 6th grade and she's telling BK she's not interested, and he is not taking no for an answer even back then. So this isn't her being unkind to him. This isn't him being bullied. This is her not being interested and simply saying no. And, at some point, I think this had to, from Kim's point of view, start to feel like she was being harassed. And maybe at that point she did get irritated, and rightly so. So it says in the article, he would always say, "Oh, Kim, I think you're pretty," just weird comments. And she'd say, "Oh God, leave me alone." So that's not bullying Bryan Kohberger. That's a 6th grader saying, "I'm not interested," and him not taking no for an answer and continuing to pursue her, even though she was not interested. So I think Kim, and let me know what you guys think, I think she straight up had the right to say no. She was asking him to leave her alone, and he was refusing. And I think this is really similar to what we've heard from the servers at the Seven Sirens, and we know he used the B word in relation to these young women at the Seven Sirens who were doing their job and just didn't want to be hit on by this guy. So I think it was intentional, in my opinion, for Bryan Kohberger to harass women. We heard from the University of Idaho students that were in the that he was in the student commissary, sipping water in the cafeteria, not eating food, had no reason to be there, didn't have any friends from University of Idaho joining him, and he was staring at them and making them feel uncomfortable. And again, I think this was intentional. I think he purposely stared at women and purposely made them feel uncomfortable in an effort to harass them. Just like I think it was intentional that he told the young woman that went on the date with him, that he texted her after that she had nice birthing hips. Just like when the servers at Seven Sirens weren't interested, he called them the B word. Just like at WSU, when he followed that young woman, that innocent young woman, out to her car, was grading females differently than the males. I think at some point, we have to make it okay for our daughters and granddaughters and sisters to, and wives and mothers to say no. And I think that if Kim was your daughter or sister, you wouldn't want Bryan Kohberger or someone like that to be able to take away her right, and to suddenly that she's characterized as a bully or somehow he's the victim in all of this. When the truth is, she was telling him he wasn't interested. He was not stopping, and it had to feel like harassment on her point. But let's get back to Carol Lieberman. The forensic psychologist went on to tell the Daily Mail that she was decided to share her theory to help victims' families in what was an extremely difficult time. She said, quote, "He shook out the rage that he built up over the years toward his first love," so that was Kim, "and all the subsequent women who rejected him, with each stabby of that K-bar." And I'm so grateful to Dr. Lieberman for sharing this. And as she rightly points out, it's not the victim's fault. It was not their fault. They were in their own homes. They were in their own rooms. They were minding their own business. I don't even think they knew Bryan Kohberger existed. And he broke into their homes. And he tried to get away with that. And so I do think it helps to know from this psychiatrist what the motive is. And she said, they're not going to hear it from his mouth. So I just wanted to try to give them some idea of what happened. So this is Dr. Lieberman. She says, their children did not do anything wrong. And what happened is not because of anything their children did. And I'm worried that they're thinking that. I love Dr. Lieberman for that. She genuinely cares about these victims, family members. And I do think it's okay. And we need to start making it okay for young girls like Kimberly to set boundaries with these guys. It's not her being unkind because she's not interested. If she says, I'm not interested, that should be the end of it. And if he continues to pursue her, it's not her bullying him at that point. This is her setting boundaries and being a sixth grader and not knowing what to do, because he was not taking no for an answer even back then. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm really tired of the I'm being bullied trope, and therefore I'm just going to take out a bunch of people. Let me know if you have a different take on it, because I think a lot of us have been bullied in our life. We've all gone through that, but we're not out there committing crimes like this. So I know people want to understand why, but I loved Dr. Lieberman's compassion and empathy for the victim's family. So I want to talk about the real reason that Bryan Kohberger took this plea deal and the 11 questions that we need answers to. So let's talk about crime. Let me pull this up. We're going to talk about crime expert Jeff Gwynn next. Oh, I wanted to share this too. Let me share this really quick. This is really interesting. Okay, so there are people that got capital punishment. So is this equal justice? And this is why family members are upset that committed less of the murdering than Bryan Kohberger did. So, is it going to be equally applied or not going to be equally applied, because it's left a lot of people with, just concerns and, wondering why was this plea deal entered in. And, the victims' families are very upset. So this is Leander James, a lawyer for the Mogans. Now she says, quote, "We support the plea deal 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome for the victims, their families, and the state of Idaho. And I respect their right to have their feelings about it." Absolutely. All right. So I want to talk about why Bryan Kohberger would have taken this plea deal. This is Jeff Gwynn. He was speaking. My source on this is the New York Post. He claimed that Bryan Kohberger could potentially gain even more notoriety during his prison life. And I got to tell you guys, I'm concerned about this too. I'm concerned about this book deal that I think is going to happen. And I haven't been able to confirm this, but I hear rumors that one of Bryan Kohberger's sisters has already been talking to Dr. Ramsland. But this could be wrong. So that I just want to say that's only a rumor. But listen to what this expert says. He says the plea deal gives him a further chance to exist in a way that will get more attention and make him seem to himself more superhuman. I doubt he's taking this plea deal to quietly disappear into the penal system. And he further pointed out that with no trial, Kohberger gets to keep certain secrets about the crimes, adding that this gives Bryan Kohberger the upper hand. So I think he's, making some great points. And let's talk about the 11 questions that we still do not have answers to. 1, whose ID was inside a glove, inside a box, inside his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home? Who did the ID belong to? 2, what about the animal hair and human hair found in his Pullman, Washington apartment? Who did these belong to? What type of animal did the animal hair belong to? 3, when did Bryan Kohberger and his father really plan this road trip? I mean, we know now that the plane tickets weren't purchased until December 10th. So it doesn't sound like it was pre-planned, being that his dad arrived at the Pullman, Washington apartment on December 13th. They were headed out on their road trip. So he arrived on the 12th and they headed out on the 13th. So that doesn't sound pre-planned to me. 4, let me know if you feel differently. It's okay. We don't all have to agree. 4, what were these 3 phone calls that Bryan Kohberger made to his family line on November 13th of 2022 around 6:30 a.m. Pullman, Washington time, which would have been around 9:30 a.m. Pennsylvania time? And one of those calls lasted almost an hour. What were they talking about? 5, did Bryan Kohberger have pictures of any of the actual victims on his phone? We heard from Dateline NBC that he had pictures of other friends of the victims on his phone and young women at WSU and University of Idaho, but we never heard specifically whether he had pictures of the actual victims on his phone. 6, will Bryan Kohberger face additional charges in the state of Washington for spying on his WSU colleague using her own security cameras? Hold on one second. I have a sound issue. 7, did BK have access to the CSI lab at WSU? I would like to know. They claim they have all the security at WSU, but I would love to know if he was able to access that lab, which had body cam footage and other footage from 5 different police departments. 8, was this plea deal reached because WSU or the University of Idaho wanted this plea deal to happen? What kind of influence did they have over this plea deal? We know WSU would have had some serious embarrassment on Bryan Kohberger's resume, because had they made a few phone calls, they would have seen that the dates and times that he gave of when he worked where didn't match up. So even when these young women were coming forward to say that Bryan Kohberger was harassing them, to me at that point, HR should have sprung into action and gone back through the resume to see if there was any of the time frames that didn't match up, so they would have an excuse to get rid of him. We know that the University of Idaho was allowed to just tear down the crime scene, and that the defense and prosecution acquiesced. So I would just like to know, did they have any kind of influence at all, either of these universities or both, in this plea deal? 9, why was Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra parked inside his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania garage and not in the driveway? Were they trying to hide this vehicle from nosy neighbors or law enforcement? Or were they, Bryan Kohberger, trying to hide the fact that he was cleaning this vehicle meticulously? 10, was Bryan Kohberger behind the Papa Rogers and Inside Looking account? Papa Rogers was on Facebook and Inside Looking was on Reddit. Did those link back to Bryan Kohberger? And 11, was Bryan Kohberger accessing Kaylee's Bluetooth? We know that the law enforcement did not return back to the Gonzalez's Kaylee's Apple Watch or her laptop. Is this because they had geofencing data that Bryan Kohberger was accessing Kaylee's Bluetooth, just like he was accessing his WSU colleague's got her Wi-Fi password and used her own security cameras to spy on her? Was he using Kaylee's laptop to get images, look at her social media, see what she was up to, or even reverse that camera to look at her when he was sitting in that apartment complex that was the parking lot that was located behind the 1122 King Road home? What do you guys think? And I want to just change out the images here, so anybody comes by knows what we're talking about. So I just think this face was so cold, so cold. There was just absolutely no empathy from this man. I wasn't expecting him to be really empathetic, but I thought at least he would maybe try to look sad, but he didn't. Thank you to Valerie so much for the $9.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I am saving up for a new camera for Reporter Room, so thank you so much. I will be putting that toward that. And Nick, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Nick says, Bryan took the deal because, like every SK, they want to live. They want to be able to continue to relive their actions, and he will love being analyzed. Yeah. And that's, and Nick's right. And that's a reason why he doesn't need to get a book deal. I just hope that somebody puts their foot down on that. I just really hope that this doesn't happen. I hope that, Dr. Ramsland, thinks about this from the victim's family's point of view and realizes that maybe I don't want to collaborate with this guy on a book deal. I hope. Thank you to Donna for that 99-cent super sticker. That is so kind and generous of you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Green Eye Sparkle, for the $9.99 super sticker. She says, my favorite channel. Thank you. Oh, you made my day. Thank you so much, Green Eye Sparkle. All right, so I'm going to take some comments. I do want to, we're not done, but I just do want to, let me take this down for a second. I do want to do thank yous. Thank you for your super thanks and coffee gratitude. This is for the last live stream that we did this weekend. And thank you for your gifted channel memberships so much. And I want to say thank you to our producers, NJazz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Christy Valentine. And thank you to our channel members. And if you would like to have your name appear just like this in all of my live streams, simply hit the join button. It's next to the subscribe button. But subscribing is fine too, because it helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm, lets them know that I'm bringing you guys quality content and that I'm also running a G-rated show. And if you are willing to give this a thumbs up, please let me know what thumbs up number you are in the comment section. And thank you so much for that. So I am, concerned. And I do think that there is legitimate reasons to be concerned about this book deal. I just do think that if we are going to platform these guys, that we do need to have some kind of ethics and morals and integrity, and also think about how this impacts the victims' families. And what I'm really concerned about is, I don't know if at this point we really do need to hear what happened from his point of view. I don't think there's any, he's going to do the woe is me, I was, bullied routine. But I don't think that's an excuse just because this young woman, Kim, didn't like him or some other girls didn't like him, that do you go in and break into somebody's house and just do away with 4 innocent people because they weren't bothering him. K Beach says he cannot profit because all of the money goes to restitution. Yes, I agree. You're right. However, you could do an end run around that by paying his family, and then his family just puts it in his commissary. That's what I'm worried about. Thank you for the thumbs up, Dynamite. Hi, Cal Gal. Glad you're here. Patty said, it surprised me that he took the plea deal since his mom said or allegedly said there would be no plea. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she said there would be no plea, but my understanding was that she didn't want him to take the plea deal. I don't think they wanted him to take the plea deal until maybe they saw the Dateline special and they realized that law enforcement knew about those 3 phone calls. That's my opinion. And I think at that point, feelings may have changed on the family member's part. At least, that's my concern. And Bryan Kohberger, remember that his family is his only link to the outside world. They're the only people that are, still going to help him besides the love-torn women who are going to write him love letters and send them inappropriate pictures of themselves, which happens with every SK. Sarah said, thank you for joining me today. Haley said, it doesn't bring anyone back. No, it doesn't. Thank you so much for modding today. Mike Thriller Reader said, there's so much more to this case, and we all have a right to know why he targeted these precious young people. Yeah, I wish he would have been forced to allocute what he did. He did write down that he committed the crimes, but he didn't allocute. And I think that if they're going to do a plea deal, and maybe this needs to be a law too. I don't know. I don't want to overdo the laws, but it seems like victims' families need to be considered, and it does seem like allocution and admitting what you did needs to be a big part of that. So there's so much more to this case. We all have a right to know. Yep. Babs says, ethics, morals, and integrity went out the window many years ago. Unfortunately, it's all about money now. And I have no problem if Dr. Ramsland wants to write a book and she donates all of the money to the family members of the victims. In that case, I support it. But if it's going to go back to the Kohbergers or into some kind of trust that they control, I do have a problem with that. If Dr. Ramsland wants to write a book and put all the money in her own pocket, that's fine too. She has a right to make her money. I'm not saying she doesn't, but I do have concerns that she's, offering all this empathy and sympathy to their families. But I just want to know, has she reached out to any of the victims' families? If you're a family member of the victims and you feel like you want to let me know that, you could do it confidentially too. You can DM me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is running right here. And tell me if she has ever reached out to you to offer you her sympathy. I just am curious. Francie says BK needs to be studied by professionals to better understand him, hopefully leading to an early diagnosis. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about too. Thank you, Pam. In true crime, it does really help to give the thumbs up and to subscribe. It lets YouTube know that I'm doing a quality show. And I'm going to be doing the Maddie Soto case next, Madeline Soto, because the Stephen Stearns trial, I was not going to cover it because it was going to conflict with Bryan Kohberger. But now that I'm the Bryan Kohberger, we're going to do his hearing where he's sentenced. I'm going to be airing that. But the Stephen Stearns trial starts at the end of this month. So I will be airing that trial on this channel. KB said the family members, the victim's family should get the money. Yeah, I agree. I think if she does the book and the New York Times article, I guess what really just bothered me in the whole article, and maybe she said this to the New York Times and they just didn't put it in. I don't know. I didn't hear any empathy from her toward the family members of the victims. And I just feel like if you're going to write a book and you want to get his perspective on it, that's fine. But the proceeds, I'm not saying Dr. Ramsland shouldn't have a right to write a book and make money. Of course she should. But if she's going to be giving, none of the proceeds should be going to anybody related to this guy. The proceeds should be going to the victims' family members and to her, Dr. Ramsland, who's writing the book. Of course, she should get paid. Andrew says he will access email for girlfriends too during his life sentence. Yeah, if he was sitting there on the capital punishment row, watching my words here, he wouldn't have as much access to stuff like that. Sirius says the way that some people treat the Gonzalez family is almost criminal. People judge them and then wonder if they would just sit back and take whatever they get instead of advocating for their child. Yeah, and I think from the Gonzalez's family's point of view, think about it from what Steve said. Steve has told us that his daughter bravely fought back against this guy. She fought back, and he feels like he failed her. That's what he said, that he feels like he failed his daughter because he couldn't fight back hard enough. And I just, want to say, that's just heartbreaking to think about it from their point of view. And so I understand why different family members feel differently, and we all grieve differently. But, Donna says, yeah, he gives me the creeps. Yep. Thanks for modding today, Donna and Christy and Barbara. Mother of Cycle Breaker says, it was his parents having to testify that he wanted to avoid. It's time to ask what the parents know and what did they. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to ever find that out. Shannon said, oh, thank you for the $5 super sticker, Shannon. Thank you so much. Shannon said, I don't think he would ever get parole, but look at Leslie Van Houten. Yeah, she was with Charles Manson, and she's out now. Look at the Menendez brothers. So I'm not, 20, 30 years can go by and people don't know what happened. And he then gets a sympathetic documentary by somebody who wants to have access to him. And opinions change. Look at Scott Peterson, who is convicted of doing away with his pregnant wife, Lacey. That was a capital punishment case. He was convicted. He was given capital punishment. And then the sentence got commuted because the laws in California changed. And this is why the Fox News expert was sounding the alarm. If you missed that part, you'll want to back it up. But Teo said, yeah. And Manson still got to be heard by the parole board. Right. Danny said, each count is for no less than 10 years. He can walk. My understanding is that it's going to be life, not 10 years. But I don't know, Danny. I don't think he has no right to get parole. But laws can change, right? Sassy Pin says, I agree. The way the parents were notified was terrible. Then giving them a couple of days to get back to court. I understand how angry the parents are. I pray they can find peace one day. DW says, Jessica, just put the money will go to BK's family and they will put it on his books in prison. That's what I'm worried about. And that's where I'm just saying that nothing should go to the Kohbergers. Put it to the victim's family. And if the author herself wants to keep the money for herself, that's fine. But please just, I don't know if it's a good idea to platform this guy. I think that's rewarding these guys. I think if we really want to be serious about, he should just disappear into the prison system. He should. Ms. BC says, incredibly incompetent plea deal with no allocution. Donna said, BK is a coward. Ann Taylor is a liar. Bill Thompson is lazy coward. And JH, we shall see. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Calga says, I'm curious, do you think this was his first crime? It's hard to believe he would start at his age. I don't know. I don't know. I do think there should be, I don't know. Next says, I know he was a minor. I know he was a minor. My point was accessories after the fact. I guess I missed the other part of that, Nick. Sorry about that. Andrew said, BK can finish his degree and try to impress Dr. Ramsland. Yeah. I mean, if she's going to come in and write a book with him, he's going to get everything he wanted from her. And it's so funny because Howard Blum said this a couple of weeks ago and, she denied it. Oh, no. And, and here we are. She's in the New York Times giving sympathy and telling us that she gave sympathy to Bryan Kohberger's family. And that's fine. But where's the sympathy for the victims' families? Did you do that too? I just want to know if that's important also. Because the New York Times article would have been a great time for her to do that. Carolyn says, look at how Casey Anthony walked. Her attorney turned an accident into, yeah. Adrian said, making personal gain from a professor-student relationship. And I think it's fine if she wants to write the book and she wants to keep the money. That's fine. But if it's a sympathetic book to tell his point of view, there's a time and a place, and this is not the time, and this is not the place, in my opinion. A bad example, yeah. Teresa said, I don't think Jessica is accurate about the money. What do you think is not accurate? Thank you, Kathleen. Blackhawk says, ask him why he committed the crimes. Did he take the long way around to his apartment? Where did he stop? Because we know he stopped. Yeah. That's a great question, Blackhawk. I'll add that to the list. And Sheila said she is thumbs up 475. Thank you so much, Sheila. And Christy is asking, thank you for modding today. Please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. We're trying. Yeah, I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your help. Green Eye says, I wonder what he had in the container at the crime scene. I'm wondering, I don't know what he had in his hand, but I'm wondering if it was some kind of a kit that he would have brought with him. I don't know, like a bag he was carrying with stuff in it. Or something else, because of what happened to Kaylee. It could have been a club or something that just looked like a vacuum cleaner appliance, a stick or something like that. Could have been like a police type of baton, something like that. Nunez says, I know it's absolutely atrocious and prayers to the families, but I learned long ago the only way to overcome grief is forgiveness. Patty said he will have women galore sending him money. He will do the poor me. I'm so misunderstood, and they will do anything that he asks. And Nick said, do you believe the parents of Bryan should receive charges of accessory after the fact? I don't know, because I don't know what was the nature of those phone calls. I don't know. I don't know I don't think they'll face charges. If you want my opinion on that, I don't think they'll face charges, because the only person who knows what was said on the phone calls is them and Bryan Kohberger. And so I don't know if we'll ever find out what they knew and when they knew it. And Donna wants to know, why are they studying him? Yeah. I don't think it's like really helping if being an SK expert, if studying BTK and writing 2 books with BTK, Dennis Rader, makes you an expert, then shouldn't you be able to know when you have an SK sitting in your multiple classrooms, or sitting on Zoom with you for classes? Wouldn't you be able to tell? Because so many other people were sounding the alarm about this guy. All these young women were sounding the alarm, but and I'm going to go do the Madeline Soto case next with Stephen Stearns, who is also a monster, and that is also a capital punishment case in Florida. All Justice says it's the son of Sam law that keeps convicted, incarcerated individuals from profiting from their story. Some states do not use that law. I will put in the Facebook group the list. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Another creep. Yeah, Stefan Stearns most certainly is. Adrian said her colleagues are not supporting what she's saying she wants to do. That's interesting, Adrian. If you have a source for that, could you please DM me on Twitter? I would love, and just tell me your handle on YouTube when you do it, but so I can credit you. But I would love to find out more about that. Parents create these monsters. I don't know if they're born this way. Because it sounds like, he was already not taking no for an answer back in 6th grade, and in high school, we know he was removed for problems with females in high school. So I don't know if it's born this way or if it's, if it's a combination of nature and nurture. I don't know. Calgoth says any profit should go to the victims' families. And Andrew says, Dr. Ramsland comes off as she's the only person that can communicate with Kohberger. And maybe she is. I mean, he knows her. He would trust her. It seems like she wants to give him access for sure. Babs says, absolutely, I'm sick of parents not parenting and paying attention to help for their kids. So it sounds like you think there was some denial here. It sounds like you think there is some denial. And NJAZ is letting you know that we are going to do the Madeline Soto case right now. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. It helps me out a lot. Help a girl out. Like, share, drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. You guys know I read my comments. Watch your words so you don't get stuck in the YouTube filter, and follow me over right now. And I will be heading over right now to do the Madeline Soto case.